Hello, and welcome to another edition of the FutureNet World podcast. My name is Giles Cummings, and I'm the founder and CEO of FutureNet World. And today we're talking about autonomous network operations. This is a subject that sits at the heart of what we talk about at FutureNet and is not just top of mind, but a strategic priority for most telcos today. There's an industry-wide recognition of the need to accelerate the journey to autonomous networks in order to enhance efficiency, resilience, and agility, and also to leverage new market and service opportunities and further monetize networks. And many telcos today follow TM Forum's framework and maturity model for autonomous networks. So who better to discuss this topic with than TM Forum CTO George Class? Hello, George, and a very warm welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Giles. I'm very pleased to be here.
Great. Now, George, we're planning a media campaign in the early part of next year on the subject of autonomous network operations in partnership with Ericsson and their managed networks business. And this has involved interviewing a number of CTOs from some of their customers who are sharing insight into their own journeys towards autonomous networks. Now, according to Ericsson, autonomous networks operations are the ability to manage an increasingly sophisticated world of network operations to achieve a desired state and business goals by creating a self-optimizing autonomous network driven by intent and underpinned by AI and hyperautomation. So, George, my first question to you is, what is TM Forum's view on the yin-yang role of autonomous operations within the autonomous network's bigger picture?
Yeah, Giles, that's a great question to get us started. And as Ericsson have described it, you're talking about a network that can self-configure, self-optimize, self-heal, and self-learn without human intervention. So that's very much about the network, and then the autonomous network operations, this digital transformation approach, evolving the operating model. Within the TM Forum, whenever we started working on autonomous networks, we highlighted two characteristics, if you like, of a network from two different perspectives. One was what we call the 0x, and the other was the self-x. And if you take them in turn, the self-x applies to the network operations and maintenance, so self-serving, self-fulfilling, self-assuring. But the 0x applies to the experience of interacting with such a network. So the concept of like zero weight, zero touch, zero trouble. And that's the experience that you want the users and the customers of the network to experience. So in a sense, it's the two go hand in hand. If you've got a self-X network that delivers a 0x experience, then you start to see where autonomous networks and autonomous networks operations come together. And in one sense, I always think that, we called our project within the TM Forum the Autonomous Networks Project, and that always got people off on the wrong foot, because it's almost like a misnomer for the project, because the project is much more than just about networks. Right from the outset, we recognize that to deliver an autonomous network, you needed to join up the world of IT and networks. You need both to be agile, you need both to be flexible to achieve an autonomous networks. Because if you actually look at our reference architecture within the TM Forum that's adopted widely across the industry for autonomous networks, it talks about intent-based operations, which are business, service, and resource operations. So the business operations are very much about the customers or the users' interaction with the network services. The service operations are exactly what they said when they're describing the services, not the network resources or anything like that. They're talking about the abstracted services. And then at the last stage, you get down into the service operation, the resource operations, where you're down close to what people would recognize as network resources. But all of that is managed in a world of closed loop controls. So making sure that whenever an instruction is issued, that it is completed, or if a service starts to degrade, the closed loop control is monitoring that and can rectify or change the service. We'll also talk about things like intelligent operations. And this isn't just what would have been the previous world of either product decomposition or service decomposition. This is about intelligent orchestration. This is about embedding AI models and AI functions into the orchestration capabilities so that you can actually learn from the network behavior and respond to the network behavior and actually reconfigure your network in real time. And then ultimately, we'll get right down into the network domains surrounding the network resources, and we'll talk about concepts such as self-healing domains, where a domain of the network can manage itself or attempt to manage itself, and not only manage itself, but heal itself or repair itself. Whenever a service starts to degrade, it can take appropriate action if it's a configurable network resource to actually reconfigure itself and redeliver on the service expectation and against the service level agreement. So whenever I look at it, autonomous networks and autonomous network operations, the two actually go hand in hand to actually, if I look at the bigger picture of today's autonomous networks.
Okay, no, that's really well explained, George. And we've talked a bit about the need for telcos to accelerate their autonomous networks journeys. And level 4 is the next aspirational goal for many telcos, where the network can handle complex processes and scenarios, and where humans only supervise and set policies. What is the autonomous networks level 4 industry blueprint when coexisting with existing multi-generation networks and legacy systems?
Yeah, so Giles, this is an interesting one. As we actually look at the AN level 4 and the aspiration, we see it in many of our members, and they're even now publicly stating that they're going to achieve AN level 4 next year, dare I say it, in 2025. And that's just around the corner as we're sitting at the end of 2024 here. Some are saying early 2026. But whenever I look at it and see what's actually happening in the industry, we have to be very careful to manage people's expectations. We're not talking about an end-to-end entire network becoming AN level 4. What we're actually looking at is AN level 4 principles being applied within single domains, against single technologies, and maybe even within a single work stream within that domain or technology. So we're seeing emerging some high value use cases, such as, for example, IP fault management or RAN optimization, being candidates for AN level 4 solutions being applied into those domains. And this is a really good start because you have to start the journey somewhere. And most members, most operators networks that we're actually looking at today, whenever we do our AN levels evaluation against them and look at the key effective indicators at each level to determine what level they're operating at today, most operators are sitting at an average of around about 2 to 2.5, with aspirations and plans to move to 3, 3.5, and then into 4 in the next year or so. So, let's be realistic. We're on a journey. There's going to be a long way to go, and we're a long way short of where our industry needs to be in terms of the vision and the dream of AN level 4. And the TM Forum blueprint for AN level 4 is about the end-to-end management of an autonomous network. And that will, and this is really important, that will include being able to wrap the network resources with industry standard management and operational APIs. And why do I say that? Because if you're trying to achieve the level of automation that we require for an AN level 4 service in an autonomous network to be delivered, the only way you can achieve that level of automation is through standardization initially and then automation. The beauty of this is that this wrapping of the network resources to expose a standard management and operational interface means that you can actually wrap not only your brand new AI enabled, software developed, software defined network functions that are virtualized network resources with a set of APIs, but you can take those exact same APIs for the management and operation of the network resources and actually wrap your legacy resources. Now, they won't provide you, the legacy resources won't provide you with the same feature functionality that your modern software-defined network resources can, but the management and operations can be consistent and standard across that set of network resources that are wrapped with the standard APIs. And that means then that your newer, more flexible software-enabled virtual network resources can be managed in exactly the same way as your legacy network resources. But that even changes the way that you need to think about how you sell products in this space. As an industry, we need to start selling connectivity as opposed to network technology. And what do I mean by that? Well, let's look at something like access. And whenever I'm using an application or a service, do I really care how I am connected to the network? I.e., do I care whether it's a radio access, a fixed access, or a satellite access? Or do I care more about bandwidth, latency, speed, jitter? So I'm more concerned about the service and the physical characteristics of the service, and are they remaining within the tolerances, if you like, or the SLA that I need to enjoy a good service. So if I can think of it like that, suddenly whenever I'm actually looking at my network and trying to deliver my network connectivity, I can discover what networks are available. I can select the appropriate network or the appropriate access and use that access technology to deliver my service. If that service starts to degrade or fail, I can then, through the network discovery in real time, either repair the access service or select a completely different technology to deliver my service over that new access capability. So I can easily switch from a fixed broadband connection to a 5G mobile connection or radio connection, and actually my service keeps working. If I'm just trying to run a high definition video conference call with you, Giles, I really don't care how I'm connected to the network. And I want that flexibility in my network to start behaving as a system and start actually giving me that experience. That's the whole concept of the 0x experience, because I don't have to wait for anything. I don't have to touch anything. I don't have any troubles whenever the service starts to degrade, because the network heals itself, the network repairs itself. I'd also then say, sorry, if you want to interrupt me, go ahead, Giles.
No, go ahead, George.
Okay, so one of the things I wanted to say was, one of the things we've discovered is, as you start to look at a network that behaves like this, something that's become, it's sort of blindingly obvious now, whenever you say it, but maybe people didn't realize it previously. But if you're going to have a network that behaves like that, you actually need a set of flexible, agile IT systems to actually manage and operate an autonomous network. So if you're sitting with legacy IT on a monolith that hasn't been changed for 10 years, and you're sort of thinking, oh, I'll fix my network, then get round to my IT, I'm telling you now, you're going to have a significant problem actually managing a network that's behaving in the way that I'm describing with a legacy IT set of systems. You will actually need to actually be able to manage and deliver an AN level 4 network, and not just a few AN level 4 domains or a service within a domain. You actually are going to need to actually have a set of flexible and agile IT components that can actually dynamically manage network resources. Also, the network resources themselves within an access domain or within the transport or in the core network are going to be needed to be redesigned to incorporate things like a status monitor, so that they can actually determine, are they performing against the SLA that they are required from my service characteristics that I've set? Are they functioning within the agreed tolerance levels? They will also need AI functions or models to actually detect whenever the status of the service is degrading, and they actually need service configuration or reconfiguration capabilities to actually not only accept instructions from external services to actually set up the initial service or to reconfigure the initial service, but also to accept an internal instruction from the AI model or the AI function that has detected that that resource is starting to fail, to allow it to do a hard reset or a hard restart or a reset or a reconfiguration, for example, to add extra resources to actually bring the service back to within the required tolerances. So we're actually seeing that as you move to autonomous networks, the network resources themselves are going to change. The environment that they sit within needs to be resigned, and the management and operational applications that sit around them also need to be flexible, agile, and capable of actually managing such a network.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about people, George. How do you think demand for workforce skills will change with these increasing levels of automation? And what implications do you foresee for the telecoms industry?
Well, I've been describing that my vision for an autonomous network and the emergence of SDN and NFV network resources, where the actual network resources are themselves becoming software. And many of the operators and vendors that I see working within this space are actually enabling their network resources to run in the cloud. What you're actually describing and talking about is a very large software ecosystem, and this requires new skill set and mindset to design, manage, and operate a network that is now almost entirely software running in the cloud, and that can be a public cloud or a private cloud. So software engineering skills will be in great demand within network departments of operators as teams work out how to design and manage and operate these highly sophisticated software resources that are delivering network functions such as routing and load balancing and firewalls. And the other thing that we're seeing is that the AN patterns of the future are not just about automating today's processes. They're about redesigning a completely new set of processes that are AI enabled. So again, that word AI, that concept is going to be embedded into the network. So the teams and the skill set of the workforce, they're going to have to understand AI. They're going to have to understand AI models. They have to understand monitoring capabilities associated with AI. Digital twins are going to be a concept where you actually build a digital replication of your network in data to allow your models to be trained on it, but also to allow you to test that a model is actually delivering the outcome that you were intending and that you predicted. So, these are certainly things that are going to happen. The other thing is you have to face the reality that certain skills that are in demand today will decline. The network plan and build team who designed networks and network topologies manually, a lot of those functions are going to be automated through AI and will deliver a more efficient, lower cost, higher coverage service than a person can do. And that's just the harsh reality of moving to autonomous networks. They will need less resources to manage some of the operational processes, to manage some of the design and build processes. But the benefit is that you will deliver a much, much better, lower cost, higher available service to your customers.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So you've talked a bit about the aspirational goals of many telcos as they're moving towards level 4. So beyond legacy and complexity, what do you think are the main challenges for the industry to progress faster towards autonomous networks and this level 4?
Well, I think there's a number of things here, Giles. One, I will say, and I've mentioned already, to deliver an autonomous network, you need composable IT. And within the TM forum, that's our ODA, Open Digital Architecture. That's the concept of a componentized architecture where the components expose their business capabilities via industry standard APIs. And you need the flexibility in your IT to be able to manage the network of the future. So that is going to be a challenge for the industry if you haven't been up to date in your IT, if you haven't been building that flexible IT capability, and you're going to start to try and roll out an autonomous network. I think you're going to run into problems. I also talked about this concept of standardization around the network resources on the management and operational interfaces to actually achieve the level of automation, but also to simplify the management and operations of the network. And I think this is going to be a big challenge for our industry because the operators are not used to telling the network vendors what they need from a network resource by way of interfaces. So abstracting the interfaces, getting rid of the complexity and the vendor-specific interfaces for the management and operations of network resources will actually be a game changer if we achieve it. But it's something that the operators are not used to doing. And it's something that probably the vendors have not been used to receiving instructions set from a collective group of operators to say, this is how you're going to configure these standard network resources. And if we don't wrap our legacy applications alongside the newer, more flexible resources that make up our autonomous network, that will actually hold us back because companies who've got undepreciated assets, i.e. legacy assets, will not want to replace them. And that's why I'm saying coexistence is the way forward. And by wrapping them, you don't need to replace those non-depreciated assets. But if those undepreciated assets are actually tied into legacy IT, that will actually slow down progress across the industry enormously. The other things is the network engineers. These are the guys who really understand how networks work, how you deliver network resilience, network availability. They need to acquire IT skills because how a network is going to be architected will be different from how it is done today. And that's going to be a change for our industry. And the final thing I'll say is about AI. If we're embedding AI into our applications and processes, then as an industry, we need to become adept at managing and monitoring your AI functionings, enabling them to perform as you intended, and being able to quickly intervene if they go rogue or start to behave in a way that was unexpected or undesired. So a number of areas where we will have challenges in our industry as a result of AI, as a result of autonomous networks, as a result of software-defined networking being adopted ubiquitously. It will give us challenges.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, George, we're coming to the end of the podcast, but as a closing question and sort of to bring the discussion to a natural close, I want to ask you if you were advising a CTO today, what are the 3 top tips you would give to deal with some of these challenges you mentioned, and so they can accelerate their journeys towards autonomous networks?
Okay, I would start off with by saying, face the reality, your network is becoming software. You need to start thinking differently about how you manage and operate a set of network resources that are themselves software applications. And that means your teams will require different skill sets and you will have different ways of actually thinking about your network. Your new autonomous network solutions, and everybody is going to be going after, some aspect of AN level 4. You need to work out how it can coexist with your existing legacy network resources. You'll never be able to go to your CFO and say, we're going to replace every network we have with a new AN level 4 set of network resources across the piece. We have to come up with solutions that allow them to coexist. And that's where I'm saying wrapping your resources in abstracted industry standard APIs will enable that. And it's something a CTO needs to get their head around. And the final thing is, and this is probably going to be one of the most difficult, your IT and network departments need to come together. You need composable IT to be able to manage tomorrow's network. Tomorrow's AN level 4 network is going to require your IT and network departments to work together like they've never done before. And that is, from my perspective, one of the biggest things as a CTO that you can actually help me as I'm trying to solve this problem in the industry, get the IT and network teams talking about how do networks really work? How does IT and abstracted IT enable the management of these new networks? And actually, together, we can actually solve this problem faster. And that's what I would say is really important. The three things that are important to accelerate the journey toward autonomous networks.
Fantastic. Well, that's really valuable advice, George. So I think, what you've described so well is that the industry is making some really big steps forward in their ambitions towards autonomous networks. There still remains obviously some major challenges ahead. But I think, you're talking with a good deal of optimism. And I think the industry is definitely recognizing the opportunity. And really, I think there's also a real recognition of the need to accelerate their journeys. So I think, our discussion today has been super interesting for me, and I'm sure extremely valuable for our listeners. So George Glass, CTO, TM Forum, many thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Giles.